These are the top 5 best Warframes in Warframe 2025. Number 5. Mesa. The gunslinger may experience severe whiplash upon entering the steel path, and she may come packed with a defense that works, until it doesn't, and then it really doesn't. She is not without flaws, but like I've been saying for years, the area in which Mesa can distribute her damage is absolutely massive. Warframe sure loves to drip-feed us enemies. In low-density areas like, for example, all the open worlds, the Index and Netra cells, where enemies are far and few, Mesa picks off anyone unfortunate enough to fall into her line of sight. Mesa is in this weird spot where, in a large portion of the game, she performs rather poorly, and not that she is unplayable in a good old survival, for example. Not that any Warframe really is, but compared to the many other options, she is caught lagging both in terms of survivability and damage. On the other hand, in the area mentioned above where Mesa shines, she is basically uncontested. What other Warframes can you say that about? If we look at Warframes like Zaku and Garuda, which are both overtly very powerful with infinitely scaling damage, not only do they occupy the same space, that of dealing tons of damage with a slight team support ability added on top, but they also share that space with a lot of the roster. I think it's more important to be the best in a few areas than being decent or even pretty good at everything. Number 4. Volt. Volt is a weird case where, unlike the other entries on this list, he doesn't have one easily definable claim to fame. He is indeed a very capable damage dealer, and when it comes to disruption, he cleans house. Now granted, Eidolon hunts are dead, DE shot it and buried it 10 feet under. But Volt, once again, claims the price. He is so good that you run 2 of him. It's because he alone has the ability to increase the operator's damage. He is a shockingly good support with his augment, and his ability to share his shields. In terms of speed, it's mostly a fun gimmick, let's be honest. Titania holds the crown, but playing Titania is like taking a shit, which is to say that it is a necessary evil, but I can't say I love the experience of slamming into every wall on the way to extraction. This is why I choose to give up the last inkling of efficiency for a smooth experience speedrunning. Volt is fine for an all-purpose frame, but he also has a few niches where he, like Mesa, really shines, which in my opinion is just barely enough to push him up into the big 5. Number 3. Kora. Kora is the most niche on this list. The thing is, though, this is a looter, shooter. It's in the name. How the gun goes, bang, matters, but so does the quantity of goodies on the ground. When we talk damage, we can get into some complicated calculations that may blur the line between theory and reality. But when it comes to drop rates, there is one queen. With that being said, it's not like Kora only generates twice as much loot as Necros, since his manner of expediting the enemies from ceasing being animate is to remove their armor. Meanwhile, Kora, you know. That's another thing. Kora is not lacking in the damage department. This leaves us with an invisible nuke continuously exploding, and somehow, someway, through quantum nonsense, duplicate the belongings of her victims. Number 2. Dante. Dante is strong to say the very least. I'm afraid that I'll have to explain why he's not number 1. That is something which I will do, but later. Right now, let's just take a look at our overpowered buddy over here. When it comes to support, Dante has the rest of the cast so thoroughly defeated that it's embarrassing. It's a disgrace. Seriously though, Overguard should be overpowered? Guard. Okay, actually, I now understand why it's not called that. But it is one of those things which are fun to abuse because it is so strong. But at the same time, you can't help but look at it and go, I can't believe this made it into the live game like this. Having the wrong status effect inflicted upon you at the wrong time is one of the most common ways to go in this game. Except, you are immune to status while you have Overguard. You can't even be knocked down. Furthermore, your shields and health are safe as long as you have Overguard, and for half a second after losing it. Dante is not the only Warframe which can grant their allies Overguard, of course, but it is his buff in which allies affected by it regenerate Overguard whenever they kill anything that elevates him above the other supports. So, for a solid second after killing one of the many fodder enemies, your teammates cannot be killed for any reason. This alone elevates Dante into S tier, but that's not all he can do. He also carries an exalted weapon that is very useful in the circuit. More importantly, he can share this weapon with his allies, turning them into mobile turrets. He also has amazing combo potential with status effects builds on his allies, and he can even increase the potency of those status effects, which makes him great at taking out tougher targets like demolists when working with a DPS teammate. Ironically, this gives him perfect synergy with Sarin. Honorable mentions. Here are the obligatory honorable mentions. Let me just say that this list gets more and more difficult every year as power creep continue to carry 90% of all Warframes, miles above what is required to solo the entire game. Anyways, Baruch. This guy runs around with 99.5% damage reduction. He is basically bulletproof. Most of that is on his shields too. And I mean, just look at that range. Problem is, if you're in a low enemy density environment, or if your allies kill even half the enemies, you just run out of steam. You need a lot of enemies to keep down your restraint, and without it you are just running around with a lot of damage reduction and nothing else. And that's pretty shit. Kora. I think she is the most underrated Warframe in the game, I really do. Unfortunately, most people hyper-focus on her infinitely scaling damage. That is cool and very much so a viable build, but she can do so much more. In low-level missions, she is a great nuke frame, and in higher-level content, she can vitrify her enemies with her wall and shatter it to spread Shatter Storm to all of those enemies. That is, if you're using the augment, of course. These damage multipliers on the enemies actually allows for Kora to deal more damage to enemies than someone like Mirage. Though the problem is that she is slow. It takes a lot of setup for her to reach her full potential, and unfortunately most of the game is just a little too fast for her. Garuda. I can't get over the fact that I placed her in C tier in my first ranking of all Warframes. Anyways, turns out that Dread Ward gives her amazing survivability, but only when engaging in combat. So, when moving to a different location, she experiences a bit of startup lag, and her combo is slow as well, which often means that the enemies may already be gone by the hand of your teammates by the time Garuda is halfway done setting up her combo. Gauss. I don't want to seem like I am underplaying our very own speedster here. He is pretty survivable, and he deals a lot of damage. The way that he deals that damage is very different than other Warframes, which is to say his buffs are unique. He is, however, just another damage dealer, interchangeable with the rest. Kullervo. Same deal with the pincushion here. Lot of damage, good AoE, really good defense. Even more so at higher levels, like over 1000. His setup time is minimal, and yet his setup time isn't zero. He is beat in terms of splash damage, and in terms of damage in specific situations. He has a small niche around the early steel path, but at the end of the day, he is just another DPS. Octavia. When in a controlled environment, she wrecks house. If she is alone and able to sit in one area, she is a free ride to level cap, if you don't mind waiting 8 hours to see the funny meme number. However, if she has to move around and deal her own damage with her weapons, she basically becomes Chroma. But with invisibility instead of armor and half of his damage buff, which is not terrible, but it is pretty bad. Protea. When the team stays in one area, it's great. Free and longer shield gates, and immense damage on grouped-up enemies. She has the same problem as Octavia. When she has to move around, you end up spamming shield satellites at your feet just to stay alive. The turrets deal good damage, but nothing compared to just shooting at your feet. If Railjack wasn't such a dead game mode, I'd be willing to give her a little more credit. Stynax. If Dante wasn't in the game, this guy would be top 2 or top 3, but his most impactful ability is just the inferior version of Dante. Granting energy is not that impactful in most cases, since your team will bring builds that would have worked without your constant supply of energy. It's so unfortunate he and Dante is so similar in what they want to do. There just is no reason to pick Stynax over Dante. Wisp. Same deal with this Warframe. The blind combo takes time to set up, and her support is, well, I'd rather be immortal than have more health. Right. Zaku. Again, same deal, he has infinitely scaling damage, but he still needs to remove that armor, which is annoying and inefficient to do when on the move. Yes, you can use Terrify instead to remove the armor, but if you have to give up your subsume slot just to function, that's probably not good news. Finally, for our number 1 slot, we have Cope May. She literally has all the decrees, and you cannot convince me that the combined power of all the decrees are not the most powerful damage and defensive buff in the entire game, speaking of which her third ability literally makes her invincible. Granted, you have to get a 666, but based on you guys' comments, math doesn't exist, and you all have innate +5 to luck. Also, let's not forget about Cope May's ability to spread status effects. Literally the most powerful ability in the game. Everyone knows that status is meta, and Cope May does it the best out of anyone. Okay, I'm pulling your leg. It's obviously Sarin. Ain't nobody was surprised. One of these days I want to make one of these videos which is just blatantly wrong and see if I can pass it off as a dead serious ranking. But not today. Look, guys, I am tired of talking about Sarin. I've already gone over her decent survivability, her added team support, and her excellence as both an ability caster and a weapon platform. So today I'll try something different. Instead of explaining Sarin's DPS potential, I'm just gonna show it to you. I'll be using the same weapon with the same mods, which is actually doing Sarin a huge disfavor, and well, you'll see why it literally doesn't matter. This is Mirage at full tilt. Volt at full tilt. Rhino at full tilt. Kora at full tilt. Sarin with Venom Dose. Sarin with Roar. Sarin with Toxic Lash. Sarin with Toxic Lash and Venom Dose. Sarin at full tilt.